All right. So what I thought I would do is just kind of moderate a conversation. When we get going, we'll sort of just play off of each other. But to get us started, so we've got different definitions of feminism. Cherie's post takes us to points of entry. Those points of entry being policy, being family life, being pop culture. And I think, so one of the questions is, what's our goal, right? Thinking about what we do as teaching, which I don't know that we always think about it in that way because it feels top down, right? So what's the goal of a blog, right? Why do it this way? I mean, we have access in all these other ways to doing work. We have classrooms, we have activist projects. So what's the end goal here, right, of digital pedagogy? What do you think?
I would say taking these things outside of the classroom is really the motivation, or my motivation, making it accessible for folk who are not in college, and who may never have that opportunity in that particular point of entry. So for me, the blog does that. It goes out farther than my voice can, my spoken word can.
But some folks use it in the classroom, right? So I mean, it creates points of entry in the classroom too, which is sort of interesting, right? Because that to me seems to be about power dynamics. And so one of the things that I sort of hear resonating, even what Cherie is talking about, is a new point of entry, right? Or thinking about an object in a new way, or the sort of point of entry. So to me, there's a couple things. One is about points of entry for other folks who are interested in getting into these dialogues. But on Isha's post, I feel like that post is you also intervening in a conversation that's going on elsewhere and saying, let me call you to account, right?
Yeah. It's so I mean, the goal for me is in general in my work and in my life is sort of loosely defined movement building work. And so I'm always looking for spaces where I can have conversations that move towards building something. And the way that the blog for me plays into that is another site of engagement on the issues that I'm working on, which it looks very different than the other spaces that we're in. And actually we had a great conversation yesterday about online spaces as places where we do movement building work, and what are some of the real deep dangers and opportunities in those spaces. So one of the dangers is that you stay online and you don't do sort of grassroots on the ground work. That's a deep danger in thinking about digital spaces as sites of movement building. But one of the great opportunities is just this kind of intervention where, and there's a number of different things. Like, for example, we have been talking about how the things that we read there's something in the work I think that everybody read about sort of meeting people where they are, and the blog lets us create those points of entry. It also lets us move across different points of entry. So the piece that I wrote was in conversation with a movement that I'm a part of, and that I'm trying to have a conversation with, and wanting to have a critical engagement with that, right? So that's one way. Another way is I also wrote a post about the Mindy Project and my experiences of trying to watch the show and the sort of challenges that I had. And one of the and so it was a very exhausted and frustrated moment, and that comes out in the piece. And I've been thinking now about other ways to have a conversation about representations of South Asian women, particularly Mindy Kaling. So I think, one of the things, if we're talking about our goals, it's really one of the nice things and one of the potential dangers of a blog space is that those goals can become murky and conflated, and that we have to be really intentional. If we're doing what I did in that piece, which was, I linked to a lot of mainstream organizations and called them out for not taking on this question of the coercive sterilizations in California prison. That was a decision, that was a choice to use this space to make that kind of case, and to bring in other people in the CFC community into that. At other times, we do things like what Robin did, which is a very personal yet deeply resonant description of feminism. And so that one site can hold those two things is a great thing and also really stressful at times, right? That is what is being put on a blog space.
I mean, part of it is about trusting our readers, right? That they come with lots of different needs, but also, to draw this connection to what you're saying, Isha, with online pedagogy. My mother just finished her college degree, which I'm very proud of. Yes, yay, mama.
Yes.
And she did part of it on site and then part of it online. But she talked about the way that folks would be on these online discussion boards, just talking sideways. And I'm crunktastic, and she's the mother of crunktastic. So you can imagine that it didn't always go well for people talking sideways to my mama online, But one of the things, because she would just be like, they don't know me. Why are they talking to me? She was very upset about this. But part of it is, one of the things we deal with, and I wonder about this when we're thinking about online pedagogy, is that it becomes so disembodied. That people just get in the comments section and they want to take all their stuff out. I mean, they should be going to therapy, but instead, you're their punching bag. But also, so that calling out thing can be interesting because the internet has a lot of calling out, right? Yeah. And at the same time, now that we have to actually listen to what other people have to say, we're not just dispensing, then a lot of what happens is that there's a tension, right? And that people are not, polite or civil or respectful. And so we're always having to negotiate what is our investment in that. Because those kind of terms are also used to police folks who have legitimate injuries and concerns. Mm-hmm. Like, women, you're being too emotional. If you would just say it to me in a nice way, then maybe I would listen to you. Tell me how I'm sexist, right? And if, and people do it around race work as well. Mm-hmm. Around trans issues as well. I mean, we see it, in all of these spaces. So, but I have noticed that professors who teach online also have to think about that, right? How do you cultivate relationships with your students? Because it's one thing to tell somebody you disagree with them online when you never have to look them in the eye, right? It's another thing when you're sitting around a seminar room and so people will say stuff online that they would never say to your face, right? And I'm always going to say it to my face. Like, in one of my Twitter beefs this year, I said, say it to my face to some people. So
I think, going back to the history of the CFC, in which I'm talking about us getting crunk in classrooms, it was never yelling somebody down, or it was defending our positions, asserting ourselves, asserting our wholeness and our humanity. It wasn't like, I'm going to mess you up and let me take my, that's not what it might involve that, but that's not what we're doing in classrooms, right? So I think that, we can be passionate about our stuff or whatever, but not, but still have a particular kind of ethic around engaging one another in real life and online that's respectful without sort of kowtowing to any in order for you to listen to me, I have to speak soft. No, I don't necessarily have to, but I don't have to abuse you to let you know I think you're wrong or I disagree with your position and so on, right? Because if we care about these communities that we're not just critiquing, we're trying to build.
Right.
We're trying to build a more just world. We're not just trying to take folk out. You wrong, bye. It's actually, this is problematic. How can we build towards something that's more just?
And so I think that one of the things that gets really interesting is that, I know when I first came to feminism, what I saw was I had the right to critique something. It was like, ooh, like I can actually say something back, right? This idea of talking back. And it was different. I mean, at that point, when I came to women's studies, we were just getting email addresses. And so, talking back wasn't necessarily what it is now. And now that, we've been talking about this conversation, we've been having this conversation on the politics of engagement. There are a couple of different pieces to that, right? There's self-care, right? Because we did end up very early on, people being like, oh, CFC, such and such happened. They said something, get them. And it was just like,
When did that?
we ain't about that.
And it was one of those things where, there was this assumption that somebody's going to swoop in and say the thing that needed to be said and fly away. And it's like, that's actually not what we're interested in. And quite frankly, if we're doing the talking back and we're being strategic about it, then it might create a space for somebody to come and actually engage in the dialogue as opposed to feeling like they got told. And the other piece that we also got into was internally, some people are going to say things in the comments. That doesn't necessarily mean that you spend your day trying to teach them why they need to be reading Audre Lorde or anything else, or why they just need to go somewhere and sit down. That expends a lot of energy. That expends a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of energy out of you. And while we do the work online, we also live in the world around us, right? And trying to hold both of those, I think, is significant and important. But we have to be very mindful of the fact that there's a lot of energy that can be expelled in that way. And so trying to figure out how we do what mode of engagement makes sense at, for what thing, picking battles, if they're battles, seeing points of entry, right? Seeing ways to actually elevate or invite people. Because I think that's one of the things that our conversation moved to last night was, if we want people to be attracted to some of the things that we think that are important, then we have to make it so that it's accessible, and we have to make them want to engage with us.
I mean, and part of that, though, is also about